Welcome to the Non-Sequitur Show. Continual watching beyond this point may result in terminal face palming and a complete loss of wokeness. You have been warned.
All right, a little late, better than never though, right? Hey, welcome everyone. It's a later show. It's gonna be a short show. Unfortunately, I do have a hard cap tonight, but let me just kind of jump on in because I want to welcome back potentially criminal. He was on about a week ago or something, give or take, to talk about frauditors and auditors. But he's back to give us some insider information about the sovereign citizens movement. How cool is that? Because we all love sovereign citizens, don't we? So let's get started. So first, reintroduce yourself. People don't know you. I want to get you some subs, man, because you got some good quality stuff. So the link is in the video description. Before you even get going watching this, guys, go sub to him. And if you're watching this after the fact, go sub to him. So anyway, Sean, welcome back, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Steve. Hi, everybody. My name's Sean Martin. I'm an attorney out of Cleveland, Ohio, in the Cleveland area. I do criminal defense work. I have a channel called Potentially Criminal. We talk about a lot of things that are going on in the news and popular culture that are criminal defense related. I make, my own private content, but also, if there's time and things permitted, I try to stream trials as they go on. And this past week, I was streaming a trial out of the Columbus area where a guy was accused of murdering his wife. And then he was accused of staging her hanging to make it look like she had committed suicide. It's actually a very interesting case. A lot of forensic stuff, a lot of anthropology work was done. And then this morning, they actually acquitted the guy of all the murder charges. And that was actually pretty interesting. And then this afternoon at noon, they released the redacted affidavit for the search of Mar-a-Lago. So went over that as well. So today's been a busy day.
Yeah, I forgot about this one. And I have followed both of those a little bit. I did watch the video of the guy, like they said storming out. He really wasn't storming out of there. But he did walk out, which obviously, is unusual. But the whole Mar-a-Lago thing, the fact with the whole FBI, we have to have a different show on that because I find that fascinating. I had a show for a little while called Over and Under that I did with a friend of mine, Chris, from Australia, that we definitely need to bring back one of these days because he's great. And we talked a lot about Trump stuff, and what I've been following along the lines of the whole Trumpian. Oh, he takes all these documents, which he wasn't allowed to do. No, I guess they are allowed to do, but it'll have to be a certain ways to do it. And he just skipped all those.
Well, to be fair, the whole issue with the Presidential Records Act, this happens with every president. Every president since Carter, when this law.
Yeah.
Well, like Obama's got a bunch of records, and you're supposed to, your presidential library becomes a designated security area.
Right.
And, if you notice, there is no Barack Obama library yet. So where is he storing his documents?
In the basement? Is it wine cellar? I don't know.
But presidents throughout history have fought over this on a massive scale. So it's not anything new.
Right.
And
but
also
there's a procedure for it though. And he just basically
there kind of is, and the procedure is because I want them. I mean, really, that's how it works. These presidents will say it's mine.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then the National Archives says no, and then there's a big lawsuit over it. And the lawsuits go on and on and on. So there's
fascinating.
It is. And whether or not you how you feel about it one way or another, all really is what you knew before. And then there's, as I like to joke, the black lines of transparency on half of the application. So we don't actually know anything.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, what is there is probably not going to be released to the public either. So we're not going to really know what is going to be redacted. Or will we? Or will we see the documents that they have?
At some point, we would know because once you get to trial, that all becomes
evidence.
Even then, yes, because let's say if they indicted Trump, they would have to provide an unredacted copy. But since he's not actually charged with anything
yet,
that's not out there. So
yet, I mean, whether he is or isn't, who the hell knows? I mean, he seems to be Teflon, But anyways, a couple of things to get out of the way. Yes, I am streaming on my other channel in about an hour, give or take. I'm having a WOACB Victims Hotline. So that's for anybody that has been a victim of Katie Joy Paulson, who used to be a co-host on this show with Kyle. If she has defamed you or been a victim, you can call in. I've already got people wanting to call in tonight, so I have it scheduled on the Great Debate Community on Monday, but tonight I'm going to do it on my own channel. So if you haven't subscribed to my main channel, that's also in the video description, and also the Great Debate Community is in the video description. But you guys are here to talk about sovereign citizens, because man, these people are just so funny to talk about. First, we get started. Brandon Lesko for $5. All documents are stored in the liver.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that.
You have a lot of people that talk about you and drinking lately.
Well, today was a little interesting. So yeah, but I don't normally do it. I'm not as bad as some of the other people, but yeah, today was worth it. It was an interesting day.
I drink water, a lot of water. I mean, literally, this is water, coffee. That's like my main choice. Yeah. My main choice is water, coffee, or Diet Coke. I drink so infrequently, and when I do, it's like a beer. Like I went out the other night with my roomie, and I think I had like 2 of the cheap. You know how they have like promotional drinks?
Yeah,
it's like real cheap, but it's like that much alcohol and all like syrup. I had like 2 of those, and I was done. So, anyways, all right. So let's get started here. Tell us about sovereign citizens, what they are, what they believe, and why the hell they believe in. And my big question that we want to know by the end of the night is how they think they're going to get away with this stuff, because I've never seen one actually do anything that was legally right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. Is like, what do they think they're accomplishing when they never win a case? So.
Yeah. So, I mean, sovereign citizens basically come down to they're people who don't want to follow the rules. And that's something, if you notice when you watch any of the videos that they're in, those are the type of people. They're agitated, they're confrontational. And just in general, they feel the rules don't apply to them, period. A lot of them have a self, very much the Dunning-Kruger effect. They think they're far smarter and far more sophisticated than everybody else. They think they're the smartest guy in the room. And that's clearly not the case, because if they were really that smart, or if these were really truly unique theories, then they would work and everybody would know about them. These are the type of people who they click on this one neat secret bankers hate, or law professors hate this guy. Those are the type of people who would click on those things. They think there's a shortcut. They think there's an easy fix. Excuse me. And a lot of them really came out of people who just don't like being under authority. Now, I'm not a fan of government either myself, but I also acknowledge they kind of control things. So a lot of them start out as, people who are tax protesters. And, to be fair, I don't want to pay taxes either, but guys with guns are going to come kick down my door and drag me away, so I make sure I pay taxes. I just acknowledge it.
I tend to be a minimalist when it comes to that, but I understand it's necessary evil, so I don't have a problem with that. But as you said, you made some great points that I absolutely agree with right off the bat.
Sure.
This is what I've noticed. The same thing with flat earthers. They think they're smarter than everybody else, right? They think, oh, I am so cool because I know something that the average person doesn't know, and I know all these loopholes that if actually worked, real lawyers would be using them to get their clients off. Where they
I would. Right? I would. Oh, yeah, I'd be using all that stuff. And that's the thing. Once a lawyer hears about like a case that works somewhere, it goes around to everybody, and everybody rips it off and uses it, and they'll. Yeah, so that would be clearly the issue.
That'd be awesome. It'd be awesome. Look, if you had all this, think about how popular it'd be if you used all these little techniques to get all your clients off. You'd be the best defense attorney in history.
I could charge
100%.
I'd be $1,000 an hour making my money. But yes, with the sovereign citizens, they think that's an issue there. But a very common thing with a lot of sovereign citizens, and I won't say all of them, but common for a lot of them is also they're kind of scam artists in a way. Not the average, like the Yahoo you see on TV, like getting his window smashed out or acting an idiot in court, but the people they go talk to. And they'll hold seminars where they'll teach you the ins and outs of their strategies. And they'll give you the paperwork, and they'll teach you how they use it. It's a very common thing. And they'll go around and sell this to people, and they'll charge you like $150 a person. And what they'll do is, they get a group of them together. That's making good money. And then after a while, things catch up to you. Your scam kind of falls apart. You come up with a new scam. And if you go online in YouTube, you can see these guys giving presentations to people. Those aren't for free. They're charging you for that.
Yeah, it's just like seminars, right? And then they have these pamphlets,
seminars,
and then if the pamphlet doesn't work, they come up with a new and improved version. A couple things in the live chat you might be interested in. Somebody has asked, do either of you know the Constitution? Yes, I actually do. I have sworn when I joined the military on the Constitution. I've read it a few times. I'm a little bit familiar with it, at least. He's an actual lawyer, so I mean, he had to literally study it. I mean, go figure.
Yes.
And then they want to know if we even know the difference between a lawyer and an attorney. The way I understand it, I'm not an attorney, but an attorney in fact, which is somebody who has passed the bar, or an actual lawyer, can act as an attorney, which is a representative of somebody, as an agent. But an actual lawyer is somebody who's actually passed the bar and has those qualifications. So all lawyers are attorneys, but not all attorneys are lawyers. That's how I remember it. Is that correct?
And that's like
basic.
If you want to use the actually argument, that's actually correct. But in reality, if you claim that you're an attorney, right. Nowadays people think, I'm an attorney, I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
People nowadays, that's the same thing.
Yeah. It's so intertwined to be one of the same, right?
Yeah, and if you tried to tell, if I tried to tell the Supreme Court of Ohio, well, I never held myself out as an attorney, they're not going to buy that argument.
Right.
That's you should stay away from that argument. Period. You stay out of that pool. Originally it had a meaning, but now it doesn't.
Yeah.
Really,
it would be very similar if let's say you held some position in a corporation of some kind of officer position, and you say, I'm an officer. People are going to think that you're a police officer, because these words have different meanings. So you got to be real careful. Yeah. It's a matter of intent. I think it's a matter of obviously semantics, but yeah, I mean, look, I've had power of attorney. I've given powers of attorney. I don't use if you say you're an attorney, and you better say you're an attorney in fact, to be clear, and that way people know the difference. But
yeah.
They say an attorney. I'm sorry, you're wrong. We're wrong. They say a lawyer is anyone who studies the law. This sounds like chilly to me.
Well, and if you I dare you to go into court and say you're a lawyer to the judge.
Yeah.
And then say, well, I'm not actually, because he's going to say, oh, so you got a bar card, and it's a distinction now there's no distinction anymore.
Yeah.
Way back when there used to be distinctions, but and that's part of the issue also with sovereign citizens. They seize upon old things. So one of the common ones is a gold fringed flag. An American flag with gold fringe on it is actually an admiralty flag, which is a maritime issue. Well, if it's a maritime issue, that would actually traditionally, back in 1787, you would fly that during a courts martial or in an admiralty court. You wouldn't fly that anywhere else, but that's obviously not the case anymore. So you can have that and things have changed over time.
Yeah, they're a little off on the times on that.
But so they're correct. They're correct 150 years ago, 200 years ago.
Yeah.
So and that's a common one they use is when involving motor vehicles. They use Black's Law Dictionary from the turn of the century when driving meant like you're driving a team of animals. That actually had a legitimate difference. But also back then, generally, you were riding a horse or walking on your own. You weren't, you didn't hook up and have your own stagecoach wagon.
So times have moved on since then.
Yes. And they do that. Yeah. So they use things that were correct that aren't correct anymore.
Yeah. And he also, also just look up the dictionary, look up the definition. Let me make this very clear for people that may not remember that I wrote a paper on this or an essay on definitions. Definitions are descriptive; they're not prescriptive, unless it's from a prescriptive source. Something like a mathematical prescription would be, assign something to be the case. But for a general description, they're sensu lato, meaning they're just a general, broad, common parlance kind of thing. So looking up a definition really won't tell you much. But the understanding, as far as I am aware, an attorney is just somebody who acts on behalf of somebody else. But a lawyer is somebody who's passed the bar. And he says that an attorney is somebody who's passed the bar. I don't think that's correct.
Well, actually, the attorney has passed. I'm sorry, and I didn't hear you right, Steve. An attorney is generally someone who passes the bar.
So I think it's a lawyer.
Because I'm an attorney. Well, but you're an attorney at law. You're not a lawyer.
Okay, attorney at law is somebody who's passed the bar. But an attorney could be anybody who just acts upon.
Sure, but if you hold yourself out as a lawyer nowadays, there is no distinction anymore.
I agree with that.
There's the actually argument. And then somebody also pointed out, what's the constitutional minimum for standing? There shouldn't be a minimum for standing. Standing was something courts made up to try to limit access to courts. Standing is nonsense, I think. It's very easy to see if somebody's an aggrieved party, if they're an injured party. But the way standing has been turned into this bastardized thing now, no, I think courts have abused this idea of standing. And the Supreme Court used it to try to get rid of cases and to, I think the Supreme Court has acted to consolidate its own interest and power over the past 250 years. So, no, the minimums for standing, I think standing is actually a BS way of looking at stuff.
Can you explain that to everybody else?
So, like, if you try to file a lawsuit, they'll say, do you have standing?
Mm-hmm.
And standing is supposed to be, well, under the law, are you an aggrieved party, or do you qualify somebody under the law to bring the suit? A very common one of those is like during 2020 for the election lawsuits. They tried to claim people didn't have standing. And it's like, I'm a voter in that state. How much more standing do I need?
Yeah, so something similar would be like, let's say you defamed me, but somebody sues you because you defamed me. They wouldn't have standing in that case, right?
Yeah, and that would be actually standing as well. Or if you smash the window of my car, my neighbor can't sue you for that. I can sue you for that.
Yeah, because it's an intentional tort toward you.
Yes.
All right, sounds good to me so far.
So when they go through those things, they, like I said, they rely on older things. They also misstate law or misunderstand law, and then when they do that, they talk with other people. And Chili DeCastro is a great example of that. They think they understand the law, so then they try to apply it, and they're not applying it correctly.
He is like the poster boy for this too. It's like, seriously.
Yes. Well, a lot of them are. Or like there's a famous one where this girl's sitting in her car, and the police are knocking on the window, and she's like, according to People v. Battle, it's, traffic infractions are not crimes. Okay, great. She's citing a law in a different state, or a court ruling from a different state, and she's not in that state. So even, let's say that's correct, it doesn't work where you live. And even if it is correct, have you read it, or, you're just reciting what you learned from somewhere? Like, could you articulate by reading the opinion exactly what they meant? And certainly they wouldn't. They do, like I said, Chili does this a lot. You focus onto like part of one sentence in a paragraph, and you ignore the rest of the paragraph, even the rest of that sentence.
Do you find that often that people will cite a law not realizing that law might be case law in some other state, that they're not in that jurisdiction?
With regular people, yeah. With like lay people, that's a very common thing. Especially like if I take a court-appointed case, which I do a good number of those. You run into people, especially guys who are in jail, because a lot of them have free time, and also a lot of them there's a lot of jailhouse lawyers out there, which is funny because you're like, if he was that, if you try to explain, like, if that guy was that good, he wouldn't be sitting in jail with you, man. Like, he didn't find the key, and they're just keeping him quiet.
Well, I will say this though: there have been some cases where jailhouse lawyering has succeeded.
Sure,
but I've not seen any case for sovereign citizens where it's worked. Nothing.
Well,
you know of any? I would love to hear those cases because I haven't seen any.
No, I mean there are times where like they, when they tell you they've won, and that this is when these guys tell you like, oh, I've put prosecutors in jail, or I put judges in jail, or I've had this or that go on. The one thing, if you ever want to call them out, said, please provide me a case citation. Give me the court and the case number where that happened, because you can at least look up and see if the case is actually real.
Yeah.
Now, what might happen is the case got dismissed. And sometimes this happens where, especially in really small areas, you just annoyed the shit out of the guy who's the prosecutor. And the prosecutor's some guy who's a part-timer. He's doing it because it gives him, like, the city he lives in pays him like $10,000 a year to be the solicitor and handle like DUIs and the little stuff that goes on. And yes, you've just annoyed him and showed up a million times in court, and the guy's like, fuck it, I'm out. That doesn't happen as much anymore because people just, they are willing to fight back against them. But there are times where that's happened. But anytime somebody tries to tell you I've won a case, please provide citations. What court, what year, what case number was it? I want to see it. Show them, like, they have receipts for that too. Just like everything in life, especially for legal cases, there are receipts for everything. So anybody who ever tells you like, oh, I got out of this or my uncle got out of that, like, well, where, when, how? And then usually they don't like giving you that answer, because then you find out, okay, either they got dismissed, but it doesn't say why, or they ended up pleading out or getting convicted, and they just don't like talking about it.
Yeah, it's strange how so many people talk about legal stuff is so unwilling to actually give evidence to any of their things that they purport, right? So, so
a lot of that going on.
Is it true that the sovereign citizen movement kind of started initially with like overtones of racism? I remember reading like the John Birch Society, the initial things where these people started coming from, which was obviously, if you remember the John Birch Society, very, very pro-white, very racist. They basically just didn't trust the government and anybody else.
Well, I mean, maybe, but I think a lot of the sovereign citizen movement came from, for the longest time, you just did whatever the fuck you wanted in life. you didn't really have to worry about the government getting in your way or coming after you. I mean, really, if you in 1855 or even 1895, you know, what government did you actually have?
Yeah, a lot more autonomy.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's part of it goes back to, you know, a lot of sovereign citizens. You know, now there's different, they kind of come in waves and different sects of sovereign citizenry. One that's very common is they generally hold that the sheriff is the highest elected authority that they'll trust or obey. Which is funny because then when they actually deal with sheriff's deputies, they won't listen to them, or in some cases, for the, you know, the very few, some of them get super violent, and some of them have had shootouts with the police before. They've killed police officers, have engaged in terrorism before. So they generally, you know, a lot of them have this mindset. It's, you know, of like the Old West, and, you know, Sheriff Johnson is your, you know, the highest person you have to worry about.
Right, because that was the law of the town, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
it's hard to like just to run through all these because there's just so much to it. There's so many different sects of it. One of the very common things, and I'm sure people have heard this before, is for a lot of sovereign citizens, they believe that there's actually a secret bank account the government placed in your name because of your birth certificate. And I always think this hilarious, like, where's all this, you know, apparently the government's got all this money, but we're so far in debt.
Well, that I mean, back in like the 30s, they took us off the gold standard, right? And and so they think to somehow back this full faith and credit that to back everything, they do it by making humans, citizens, the commodity. Well, it's not even a commodity. I guess it's not a commodity. It is what it would be, the backing to foreign.
Yes.
Yeah. So to foreign lands. It's like I don't understand. Yes. I don't even understand the reasoning behind this. But for some reason, we as citizens are the collateral that back, I guess, maybe like fiat debt or something.
You know, and that's where when you listen to it, when you actually get into it, you don't know where the hell they came up with this stuff a lot. And that's where a lot of it doesn't make sense. And it's fun to initially dig into the lore or listen to some of their presentations. But after a while, it's just straight up conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's like complete nuttery. And even, I think that's one of the reasons that they've gotten ahead, because it's so much, you know, just bamboozling people. But the same thing, like, I don't know if you've ever heard like the Thunderbolts Project, which is like Electric Universe. They mix in like real science with pseudoscience. It's mostly pseudoscience, but occasionally they'll have some real science to make it sound so much more realistic, even though it's complete nonsense from start to finish. And I think that's the same thing with the sovereign citizens, because people have to parse this stuff out and go, okay, there might be a grain of truth here, but everything derived from that's it's just complete nonsense. And it's probably very time consuming and a lot of litigation, a lot of paperwork involved.
Well, no, it's very easy actually, because when they get confronted in court, everything falls apart because they have nothing to support with.
Yeah, but don't they tie up the courts with this nonsense?
Yes, well, that's where I was going to get to. Yeah, sorry. And a very common thing is when with all these things, they engage in what's known as paper terrorism.
Paper terrorism.
They will file.
Yeah.
They will file frivolous lawsuits.
Yep.
Scientology. After a while, well, yeah, but these guys are like Scientology, but there's a million of them. They don't have the power of Scientology, but imagine.
That really? No, seriously, is that really? Do you think there's a million sovereign citizens out there?
Well, I mean, there's like well, actually, I bet there's.
I mean, I have no idea.
Out of 400 million people, there's got to. Well, out of 400 million people, you've got people who believe in redemptionism, tax, you know, free men.
See, I was thinking there's maybe like 1,000 of these people.
There's going to be a bunch of them, but there's like differing degrees. Like there's differing degrees of nuttery on the scale, but I bet there's at least 1 million people.
God,
there's, you know,
that's scary, man.
Well,
if most
of them are harmless.
Digits, I'm scared.
Yeah, but most of them are harmless. Yes, most of them are. I mean, if you go on YouTube, most of them are harmless. They try their shtick and they don't understand why it doesn't work, and they just move on. And they try again and it fails, and then they move on, and they try again and it fails, and they move on. I've seen some that have been at
it for quite some time. I mean, Chile hasn't given up hope yet.
No, and Chile's probably one of the more dangerous ones, because I think he will be dangerous to people.
Yeah,
but a lot of the idiots and yahoos that are in their cars getting drug out of them, most of them are harmless, ultimately, at the end of the day.
They try it once, they realize it doesn't work, and you never hear from them again.
Yeah, or they just, you know, they act like, oh, yeah, I showed them what's up, but the next time they get pulled over, it's, you know, yes, sir, no, sir.
Here's my license.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, there's so many different veins of sovereign citizenry. In addition to the bank accounts, there's the idea, like, if your name isn't, your birth certificate name in all capital letters is not you.
It's a corporation.
That's actually the trust. It's the corporation. You represent the corporation. So they're there to redeem that money. So people have tried to get that money from the government.
Good luck with that. The government doesn't like to give it money to begin with,
but they try to file these actions with the government, and they end up getting convicted of fraud and like wire fraud against the government. Like they try to get the money from different federal entities.
Is it okay? Well, what makes it wire fraud rather more than like extortion or I don't know?
Well, it's fraud because it's wire fraud because you use the wires, so like electronic means to commit the fraud.
So that's why it's wire fraud. That doesn't exist. They interpret that as fraud.
Well, they're not asking for it, but they're trying to perpetuate fraud on the government by false legal documents, things like that. So, for example, if I send an email out and I'm committing fraud, that's wire fraud. Now, the wires technically, traditionally, were like, with the telegraph, where it's like the wires, but the wires being electronic. Right. So it's basically electronic-based fraud.
Anything that's put over the internet could be wired.
Yeah, and if I mail the documents out, that's mail fraud.
Mail fraud.
So, yeah. So they do that. They also believe, and this is where this one's kind of fallen out of power, or kind of fallen out of popular use for a while now, is the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code. And that is actually a legal framework for the governance of different things. And there's different articles in the UCC. And one of them, the common ones you'll hear people cite, is from Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code. And that covers the sale of goods. Basically, anything that's not real estate or has a title attached to it is a good. So it's how you would go about contracts, how you resolve contracts. That's where they feel they can, when they sign a document, they say UCC 2-207 without recourse underneath it, where that's their way of trying to act like once they sign the document, that's their way of getting out of it. That's a very common one. It's like I said, it kind of comes in waves. And then after a while, these guys will recycle the scam and then try to get new suckers. That's a very common one. Another one is they attach onto sovereignty movements. So, for example, in Hawaii, there's actually a big sovereignty movement in Hawaii. They feel that they were kind of invaded by the United States. Okay, and they were, but hey, shit happens, in history. And they feel that Hawaii should be a sovereign entity. And they get, obviously they got their own brand of lunacy, but they latch on a lot of the sovereign citizenry. Hawaii has a lot of it, believe it or not, for as small a place as it is. That's another way these guys kind of, you can find them is, in sovereignty movements, freemen movements.
Freeman on the land. Yeah, some of them
freemen on the land, but they call themselves freemen. You'll see that also in, Britain and the other parts of the Anglosphere. So Canada, everywhere else in the you'll see that sorry, I just got a text. You'll see that everywhere else in the Commonwealth. So Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Britain, you have people who believe they're freemen on the land. Their sovereign citizenry is a little different because just how they act and the laws they go forward on. But they try to use common law. Every once in a while, you'll see videos of like the judges and listening to their nonsense. So they'll stand up in court and say, well, the judges abandoned the courtroom. And because it's admiralty law, they're claiming it's maritime law, the judges abandoned ship. Well, and they consider the judge the captain. Yeah. Well, if the captain has abandoned ship, actually under maritime and admiralty law, if the captain abandoned ship, that actually has meaning. And like there are times where like really in admiralty law and maritime law, there's like an abandoned freighter because it caught fire. There's actually law out there like if you take it, it's yours.
Yeah, it's like there's your property at that point.
Yeah. There's real things like that right now. You can go do that. Now, if there's people on the boat and they don't want to get off the boat, that's piracy. So don't go out and do that.
Yeah, but if it's an abandoned vessel and the captain has abandoned the ship, a third party from some other place can come in and take it as if for salvage or whatever. Yeah.
So, but then they say like, the captain's abandoned ship. I'm now assuming command. All charges are hereby dismissed.
Yeah, good luck with that, right?
And then they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm done.
I can't, you talk about them and you say, look, this is all clearly, a scam and things of that nature. But I honestly, some of them don't recognize it as a scam. I'm sure some of them do, but a lot of them truly believe, what they read. They think for some reason anything they read on the internet or any video they watch must always have the truth. And they don't have the wherewithal, the education to differentiate fact from fiction, right? And they, as you said, they want to appear to be smarter than everybody else. So I think a lot of people really do believe that, though.
Well, I don't think the majority of people believe this or think they're smarter than everyone else. The people who buy into these things, like kind of the people who attend these seminars, they believe that there's like, they're the people who believe there's always an easy fix.
Yeah.
That they think there's shortcuts, and that there's always a way to get out of things. So that's more of it, I would say. And somebody's offering them that way. And like, if it wasn't sovereign citizens, it'd be some other stupid thing that they'd be getting sold.
Yeah, well, the same thing with flat earthers, man. They don't want to take the time and the patience to actually learn real science. I mean, physics is hard, math is hard for some people, and I get that. But they want an easy way out because they don't. They're like, oh, you guys think you're so smart because you know basic physics and basic math, but we don't have to know any of that stuff because, you know, it's so simple. But once you start asking them any kind of technical questions about things, they clearly have no idea what the hell they're talking about. Brandon Lesko for $5. Brandon really likes you. He's from your channel, obviously. Beer fraud, question mark.
Yes.
Beer fraud.
Brandon, don't worry. We'll be working on that later.
I'm more of a Scotch person, but it's all good.
Well, I've already been drinking beer today, so I don't like to switch it up because it'll get me a little sick.
No, that.
But what happens with a lot of these are the type of people when they get, you know, I make the joke, these are the people who would buy the extended warranty for your car when those people call.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's just that they're suckers.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it like that, but there's no other way to describe it is they're suckers. And they get sucked into believing this. If it wasn't this, it'd be the next scam. Or like when the Kirby guy shows up with the vacuum, they buy it. Or they do Amway, or they do, like, if it wasn't this thing, there'd be something else that they would be buying into.
They don't really think very critically. Yeah, exactly. And I think they do have that particular mindset, and I've seen it so many times. I've even known people that were really, you know, I consider to be pretty intelligent fall for some of the dumbest things. And I think anybody can. Look, I can think, honestly, you could be a genius, but certain scams are really well done.
Certain ones are, yes.
Yeah. So, I don't begrudge somebody from falling for something once, but you do it again and you don't learn from it. That's where there's a problem. It seems like these sovereign citizens probably will buy into anything, and they just don't learn from the facts that they're being scammed.
Yeah, well, and also for a lot of people, how many people truly have interactions with court, for example? Most people don't, or if they have, it's something very perfunctory they've been involved with very quickly that happened, so they don't know the real nuts and bolts of what's going on, or how many people actually will sit down and talk to an attorney.
I had a 2.5 year long lawsuit. I probably learned more about law than I ever wanted to freaking know. You know, I took law in college, but Jesus, man.
Yeah. Ridiculous. So it does turn into that being an issue for a lot of people. So yes, everybody gets. I've been suckered on things in life, and but I admit I got suckered, and I don't do it again.
I agree. We all have. Everybody something along the line. Yeah. It's usually pretty simple. I mean, minor stuff, but then you look back and go, yeah, I probably should have thought about that a little bit more, and you learn from it, right?
Oh yeah, no, like I bought into something in college, and I was like, wow, I got suckered hard on that.
Was it Hinkle knives or something like, or?
No, it wasn't that, but it was kind of up there.
Yeah.
And thankfully it only cost me a little bit of money, and that was a cheap lesson in the scheme of things. I spent the money on that instead of beer.
I'll tell you mine. I'm not ashamed of it. I didn't lose any money over it. Yeah. But I was doing something on to look for something, and I contacted the person, and they were like, hey, we want to make sure that it's not a bot. I'm going to send you a number from Google. Can you just repeat the PIN number kind of thing?
Yeah.
It's for Google Voice. And what they do is they basically they set up a Google Voice account, and then they send they send you to you to verify the PIN because they're using your phone number to get a Google Voice so they can use it for other scams. So and I got it fixed, but it was just like I didn't even think about it at the time because it even says that I don't give this out to anybody, and you do. This was a long time ago. But for people, have you ever go to buy anything or do anything from Google, what do they call it? Google Place, Google Marketplace, I think it is, or
Google,
or Craigslist. If somebody ever says to you, "Hey, Google Voice is going to send you a PIN ID. I need that PIN ID to verify that you're not a bot." It's a scam. It's a full-on scam, and I fell for that. But you know what? I learned for it now, and now I can make other people aware. Don't do it. Again, I didn't cost me any money. I didn't matter my number. I got back. It was no big deal to fix. They use it to start perpetuating scams on other people. But yes, it's small things like that because you're in a hurry. You're not really thinking. You want it. You want the product. You want whatever it is, and so yeah.
And it, like I said, there are some things that at some point they were right about. But they're no longer correct on, and that really fuels a lot of what the sovereign citizens do. And like I said, they're all over the world. Now you don't see a lot of this nonsense in other places. They may have
UK a little bit.
Well, no, I meant out of the Anglosphere, out of the non-English world. You don't see that outside the English-speaking world. There aren't like at least to my knowledge, not to the same level like sovereign citizens like Latvia or Lithuania, something like that.
You're probably not going to see it. You're not going to see it in Croatia and in Ukraine right now, and Japan, and you don't find it. You don't find any of these sovereign.
Yeah, well, there's the police aren't also not afraid to rattle your chiclets with a nightstick there.
Yeah,
in those places, and that does kind of get to the next thing with a lot of these sovereign citizens. And I think I mentioned this before. A lot of these guys, especially the bigger, more prominent ones, there's scams and hustles involved in what they do. So not just what they peddle to people, which are lies, but they're engaged in like tax fraud, wire fraud. They try to steal land from people. They'll file false liens. That's part of their paper terrorism.
That's a big thing. Yeah, I was going to say that they do that a lot for the paper terrorism, and sometimes you may not know you have a lien till you go to sell the house and the title's cloudy, and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, so that person's filed a lien on your property, and they try to extort you through it. They do a bunch of different things like that to try to make money out of you. They also, believe it or not, they don't like the government, but a lot of sovereign citizens are welfare queens. A lot of them are on the government dole, and they kind of view that as, well, I might as well get mine from the government, which, okay, fair enough. Okay, I get that. But then they, when you really look at them, a lot of them are poor, they're poor, and then they're on welfare because they're poor and they can't afford things. So it's not as though they're driving around in Maserati and then they're on food stamps. They're on food stamps because they're a nutter and they can't provide for their family.
Yeah, and
which is sad in its own right.
And they end up probably costing themselves a lot more money if they ever do have illegal stuff, because especially when it involves an actual attorney, that they have to eventually. I assume they get a public defender if it's criminal, but if there's anything civil, if they don't file themselves pro se, do they? Or most of them do, or do they don't? Do they actually get an attorney in any of these things? Who the hell would represent them?
Yeah, no, a lot of them won't, because if I were to represent them as an attorney, like in a civil setting, now I have to file their bullshit. I've got rules against that.
Right.
I can't participate in that nonsense.
Right.
And if you try to talk them out of it, they get mad and fire you. Now, when you're dealing with actual people in the criminal defense setting, there's a little bit of a difference, because if I get appointed, the court's basically said, will you represent this person and help them? And you have to try to navigate them through that. And sometimes you get it through people's skulls. Like, look, you don't just have a right to drive everywhere you want. Now, I will bring up, and I will say that I do think the argument of people who try to make the argument of, well, you can travel, just, walk around, would be also the same people who would scream and cry if I said the Fourth Amendment doesn't cover your computer. You do have the right to travel, but the government, can also say, just like I have the right to own a firearm, the government can take it away. Mm-hmm. I have the right to a lot of things the government can take away. So I do think you have the right to travel. Do I think the way the government, saying driving is a privilege, not a right? So it's like, okay, well, can I walk down the road? Well, some roads you're not allowed to walk down.
Well, you could drive. You could drive anywhere you want on your own property.
Well, yeah, but I can get a DUI on my own property. So how does that work? A lot of states you can. A lot of states.
Wait, really? I never heard of that before. That's news to me.
Oh yeah. You can get in Ohio. There's a lot of states you can get a DUI on your own property.
But that's not in all states.
Well, no, but a lot of states you can do that.
That seems odd to me, though.
Yeah, well, hey, that's kind of one of the problems. The government.
I have an issue with that, because if you're on your own property and you want to fuck your car up and you want to drive all around being like an idiot, knock your shit out, man. I would not. I would not want the government intervening on that, because you are not hurting anybody else. You're on your own property. Do what the fuck you want.
Sure, but that's.
Damn, I never heard of that before. That's news.
Yeah. Well,
I have to think about that. That's really bullshit, actually.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, though, for example, like I can't walk down I-90, the interstate, because you're not allowed to walk on the interstate. Mm-hmm. But I thought I had the right to travel. Well, you do have the right to travel. Okay, well, then I can't just drive a car. Well, no, because that's a privilege. But then I can't travel down the road.
Even though the roads were paid by public funding.
Well, yeah, and then that's so, like, why am I not allowed to if you're telling me driving is a privilege and you've taken that privilege away from me, how can I travel then if I need to go really far? Yeah. You can't so they stop you for so I do think that there is a little bit that's kind of where one of their arguments does have a little bit of teeth, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, because again, there's always a kernel of certain things, right?
And there are some things where it's like, okay, you got the one little bit, but then the rest of it they build off that one little bit in a different direction.
All right, let me ask you about this one real quick, Brandon. Another $5. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate all the super chats tonight, and also if you want to become a patron on the channel, link is in the pinned to the top, or become a member. you click join. We are promoting this channel now because hey, why not? Because I do these shows and I got a special.
You're back.
I'm back. I got a special show next week. I'm going to be announcing in a second, so stay with me here. But he says we're doing a separate drinking catch-up stream. Gosh bless you.
Yes, Brandon, I will be a little later tonight.
Yeah,
so.
I'm going to do it as a stream too. But in the future, when you do one of these drinking streams, I will be joining your panel. I want to have some scotch with you, and we'll just like shoot the shit. And I would love it.
That'll be great.
So let me ask about this, and I'll make my announcement of who's going to be on next week. But I'm going to let the audience try to decide to see if they can guess. Do you guys know who's back? Guess who's back? Back again.
Yeah.
See if you guys can get.
Guess who's back?
I love
Guess
that
who's
song.
back? Guess who's back?
I'm dude. Straight up, I'm a huge Eminem fan. People don't know that about me, but I think Eminem was freaking brilliant.
Oh, he was.
And still, I mean, still good. He ain't dead, but I mean, his older stuff is clearly like he peaked, but.
Yes,
he was so good. I mean, Stan is one of my all-time favorite songs, and especially the way Dee Dee, what's her name? Dee Dee? He sings with
Dido, I think.
Yeah, I love her voice. It's just harmonizes so well. But anyways, let me ask you about. Have you ever heard of Galactic Sovereign Citizens? Galactic Citizens.
The Galactic ones.
Galactic.
Are those
Galactic
like
Sovereigns.
Are those like are they related to the quantum grammar guys or no?
I don't think so. So the Galactic Sovereigns are the ones that believe that we are somehow. A long time ago, the aliens came and maybe it was Roosevelt. I don't know, but basically made a pact with the government, and so we are now in league with reptilian aliens.
Well, yeah, but that, and see, that's the thing. Very quickly, you get to sovereign citizenry and straight up, the reptilian people, and that gets in like coast to coast time when we're into that.
Art Bell,
which I will say though, Art Bell was the man, and listening to him, dude, listening to him in the mid '90s as like a 12-year-old at like 3 in the morning. Oh my God, there were a lot of nights I didn't go to sleep because I'm like,
from Rump, Nevada,
Yes, the Kingdom of Nye.
I was a huge fan. I stayed up late to listen to.
As a 12-year-old kid, though, when you start learning about the shadow people, that scares the shit out of you. Like, oh my God, they're everywhere.
Yeah, he was one of the best by far, and I like George Norrie too. But I mean, Art Bell was just incredible. I didn't like his guests. I thought his guests were just out there, but I would listen to him. Like Linda Moulton Howe and the Major Ed Dames. I thought he was just a whack job, but I was still fascinated. I still was interested. I didn't care. I was like, these people are bizarre, but I'm listening to this. So. Yeah, that's the Galactic Sovereigns, the people that believe that we're somehow So what? Maybe instead of being like a corporation and we're some kind of commodity, we're actually food.
Yeah, or we're chattel. We're chattel that's been promised to someone else. Yeah, and that could be. But there's so many groups of it. Yeah, and like going along with the reptilian and like we think there's some sort of alien governance. Quantum grammar, I just mentioned it.
Yeah, what is
there's
that?
This guy. He literally acts like he's like, one day in like 1985 while I was doing a child support case in my divorce, I figured out this code of cracking grammar that apparently the language we speak in, we're actually not stating facts when we're talking or things that are written out. And this guy came up with this idea. You add colons and hyphens and you change up. So it's like, how you present the guys, it's so fucking crazy. Some of this stuff, it's funny to watch, but you have to make sure your mind is like clearly knowing, don't absorb any of this. This is bad. It's hard to explain the quantum grammar one because you'd have to watch the guy present it because it's so stupid. I can't.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, and this same guy also believes that there was like Ben Franklin started a federal postal court back in like 1789 for like a year, and then the jurisdiction of it disappeared. So these guys are like operating this federal postal court that they started themselves, and they like try to issue liens and all kinds of legal judgments to people, and they use this weird type of grammar that's got it's very like it's formalized, like it'd be like for the Steve McRae, and it'd be like that's how you'd represent your name, and then you'd have colons and hyphens in your names to make it official, because otherwise your name is not actually a noun. Your name becomes some sort of like adverb. And like everything's an adverb, and there are no nouns. So it's like if there's no nouns, then there's no facts. Yeah, it's real. Yeah,
I cannot stand semantics gamesmanship like that. It's just
I'll send you some stuff on it.
I'd like to read it. So Heat Shield says Steve, briefly, my registered legal road vehicle drinking in my driveway is not moving illegal intent. My farm truck jumping over a bonfire in the fields legal, never black and white. So a registered vehicle for some reason, which is your property, but it's a registered vehicle. I understand that. If you drive that on your property, you can get a DUI. But if you have like a tractor,
even if it's not registered,
okay. Yeah. So if you how about an ATV?
Yeah, you get an ATV.
But not farm equipment.
No, you get a DUI on anything, really.
He says
in Ohio, at least.
Okay, well,
basically, well, and generally speaking, they consider most motor vehicles considered most things, but also includes like horses or bicycles. Yeah, like generally, I think the only thing.
Just stop it! No, I ain't buying this. No, you can get a DUI by riding a bike in Ohio.
Yes,
on your own property.
Not on my. Well, maybe on your own property, but I did defend a guy for felony DUI. He was riding a bicycle. He was just riding down. He was riding down a country road.
Okay, look, I could understand maybe in public riding a bike. I wouldn't. Why would it be called DUI? You're not driving. I mean, that. Well,
you're.
I mean, you okay.
I get what you're saying. Yes, but there's never been some guy riding home. A bunch of kids coming home from prom got killed by some guy riding his
right.
puppy.
I mean, let's have a little bit of a comparative things between what an actual DUI would be compared to riding a bike or skateboard, right? Oh, you're riding a skateboard drunk. You're gonna get 10 years of life. Okay, what?
I don't know. I don't know if a skateboard would count in Ohio. I don't think rollerblades count.
Would?
Yes, a bicycle does.
Rollerblading and while drunk. Oh.
Yeah, I don't think rollerblades would count either, and I don't think a unicycle would actually count.
This is all news to me. I've never even thought about this before. About on your own. I'm more curious about your own property. Like I said, I understand operating something that could be possibly dangerous to maybe somebody else or even to yourself while intoxicated. I get that. Okay,
that's because MAD had a great lobby. And you can't, let's say you wanted to oppose that bill. MAD comes out and screams, Representative Steve was against the DUI bill. He was so bad.
And that's what happened. That was all up. They were trying to push all this.
Well, it's part of it.
I understand the reasons why they're against our driving, obviously.
Yes,
but let's have some common sense that if you're riding a bicycle, come on.
Yes, but that's where these movements go. They creep and creep and creep and creep.
And you defended somebody on that?
Mm-hmm.
You're right about the creep. You're so funny because things start off so innocuously and so small, and they build up over time. And yet we're at a point where there's certain things that you look at the government and say, "How the hell did we get to this point?"
Yeah, and the problem was, this guy had a felony OVI, and he was riding his bicycle out in the middle of nowhere, out in the part of Ohio where like the roads have letters and numbers, like County Road W, the intersection of County Road W and County Road 5. So out in the middle of nowhere, and he definitely was drunk. He reeked of alcohol. He had gone back to get he drove into town to get another pack of tall boys. And the people at the store called the police. And when they, I'm at there making a closing argument of he was on a bicycle. I can't argue for jury nullification because I get in trouble.
Right.
But I just said come on guys, we're really gonna do this. We're here about a bicycle.
You can appeal to some kind of common sense. That's not jury nullification, right?
Yeah. Well, and somebody's talking about you get a DUI on a horse. Yeah, because that's actually I would consider that dangerous because, especially if you're driving a horse and buggy, like the Amish in Ohio, they will get DUIs because they'll pass out and the horse knows how to get home. Well, if a car hits a buggy, that can actually be kind of dangerous.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Just like a
safety,
lawnmower.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But yes, you can get them on a horse. You can get them a lot of different ways.
But again, on your own. See, I have my whole issue here is still though not on a country road. It is literally on your own property because you can drive without even having a license on your own property, can't you not?
Yeah. I can sit there. I can drive. I can build a race car.
But you can't drive drunk. You can so let me get this straight, man. All right, let me wrap my head around this. You can drive on your own property and not be licensed. But you can't drive drunk on your own property.
Yes.
Does anybody see?
Because literally, here's how this comes, and it's revised code 4511.19. No person shall operate any vehicle, streetcar, or trackless trolley within the state, if at any of the time the following apply. And then it talks about all the different types of influence you can have, but within the state. That doesn't say on a public roadway or thoroughfare. It says in this state.
Yeah, so it's just anywhere in the state. Doesn't matter public or not.
Mm-hmm.
Private.
Yep.
See, I don't know. Like I said, I personally have an issue with that, and you probably, I would think, probably would, because you're pretty libertarian, as you know.
I mean, somewhat, yeah. I think it's absolutely insane that they can do that.
Yeah, that seems odd to me too.
Because who are you hurting? Yeah, like
I don't like people telling me what to do with my own fucking property, man. I really don't.
Yes.
I had a home that was my land, my house, my castle. I owned the land, not just the house, but the land. And you know, I don't want anybody to tell me what I can and gonna do on it. That's not their freaking business.
Sure. So somebody's asking, can you drive on your own property without insurance? Yeah, as far as I know, because you know I can drive a go-kart or dirt bike, and you don't need insurance for those. And then somebody's saying like, I don't recommend getting hit by a guy riding a bicycle. Yes, and if a guy riding a bicycle does hit you, that could be bad. But in the grand scheme of things, how many times does that actually happen?
Yeah.
Like when we talk about
drunk biker, doesn't really happen.
Motor vehicle deaths, there's like 40,000 of those a year. So it's like, okay, you know, and that is, you know, a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have there's so many different rules and things these guys come out of. And somebody did mention this, and I was going to get to it. There are different sovereign citizenry goes across races and ethnicities. So for black people, traditionally, there are sovereign citizens, but they call themselves Moorish Americans. And Moors are the Arab Africans who converted to Islam, who invaded Spain from North Africa. So those are who the Moors are. And if
wasn't it Moroccans?
Well, yeah, they're Moroccans, but North Africa in general, the Berbers and the Moroccans became the Moors. So there was a movement back at the beginning of the 1900s called like the Moorish Science Movement, and it was very much about becoming empowered, becoming educated, you know, trying to help black communities build within themselves. And there was some Islamic influence there, but it actually had really good noble origins. And it does still exist today. And it is about trying to strengthen communities and do all the good things. If you heard about it, you'd be like, that's pretty cool. I think that's fine. Well, in the 70s, some people kind of hijacked part of it and then ran off into this idea that there was the Moroccan Empire here in America. Morocco had actually colonized here, and all these black people here are actually descendants of Morocco, that they're Moroccan nationals, and that there were diplomatic negotiations back in 1785 as part of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, where the U.S. came into a peace treaty with all the native tribes, which, given our history, but that wasn't what the paper was written on.
Like you said, these all probably start off with good intent.
Yes. And then if you type in like Moors in court, they show up, they wear like the fez caps. Their names are like Marik El Solomon El Bey. They have like very Islamic sounding names. They consider themselves nobility. They're very big on the idea that they view like working in court, that, you know, the people in court, like, no lawyer works for me, or I won't work with a lawyer because they're below me. They also, when they come to court, and it's just, and I feel like I'm bouncing around on this so much.
No, I mean, you're not actually. I mean,
I'm not okay.
It's just look, the whole thing with some citizens is spaghetti.
There's so much to them.
Yeah, spaghetti. Yeah. Anyways, Deb Moore says, oh no, I'm sorry. Kimawaki says the Moors like to hang their head on the 1787 U.S. Morocco Treaty, which
I'm sorry. Yes,
the Treaty of Friendship. Yeah, the Morocco Treaty of Friendship.
I'm sorry.
And they think that because of that, they're exempt from Americans' law.
Yes.
Yes. That's what I've heard as well. Yeah.
Yes, and there's a lot of sovereign citizens that view themselves as they're not state citizens, they're nationals.
Right.
They're national citizens, which I always think it's funny if these guys view themselves as non-U.S. citizens. It's like, okay, well, here, go sit in the ICE facility while we prepare to deport you.
It's
like,
so
you know, they would
change
real quick.
Yeah, it's so funny when people want citizenship when it benefits them, but when it doesn't, you know, to me, it's like the same with sovereign citizens. They're collecting social, food stamps and other benefits, which is fine. I'm all for governmental programs, but at the same time, you can't sit back and have governmental programs and say, look, I'm not a citizen here.
Yes,
it makes no sense.
Yeah,
that's fraud.
Well,
if you're not actually a citizen, you can say you're not.
It also helps if you can logically string that all together. So.
And they can't. One thing I've noticed about all these conspiratorial people, their abilities to have a very simple line of reasoning, whether it be deductive reasoning or even just strong inductive reasoning, they lack that ability. They go from here to there to there to there and there, and they put it all together in a blender and go, oh look here, and you're like, what the? How is this even an argument?
Yes. Very true. Very true.
And you have to defend those people sometimes.
Yeah, every once in a while I do. And, especially when you're in court with them, sometimes they will do things where I know there was this one case where I was not involved in it, but I watched it happen, and I started following along with the sovereign citizen every time he showed up to court, and it just worked out. I kept on having court appearances the same day. He came in and he filed all these things called all these different affidavits, and he got accused of running from the cops. And he filed this thing called an affidavit of fact, and he literally admits, yes, I ran from the cops. And this was back in 2017. So he's like, I thought the cops were going to kill me. But he's like, I ran from them anyway. I ran from them on advice from my sheikh. And that's a Moors, the head of groups of Moors, they consider themselves sheikhs, the Islamic term, being a leader. So that happened, and he filed a bunch of different other things that were legal arguments he had made and different affidavits he put together. And that's a big thing for sovereign citizens too. They believe getting something notarized is a magical process. And it's not. I'm a notary because in Ohio, attorneys can be notaries. All a notary is, yes, the person who signed this document, I confirmed is that person. That's it.
Literally, I have had dozens of things notarized in my life, and one of the things I have the same bank for a very long time, and they have free notary services, and which is nice. And so, but during the coup thing, you had to make an appointment. It was a hack, so I went to a third party. Yeah. But literally, that's all they do. All they do for a notary is they ask for your ID, they ask for the documents, they verify that you are, and they just say, okay, this person has appeared in front of me as this person with these documents. They don't give a shit if the documents are true, false, or whatever. They're just there to notarize that you are you are the person swearing under this procedure for them to notarize that things are accurate, right? That's it.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. And so this guy filed all these documents, and the prosecutor kind of got served with them. And this is the other thing. They don't follow court rules, so they didn't give proper notice. They didn't serve these properly. The prosecutor's rifling through them. And he says, Your Honor, this is all just a bunch of gobbledygook. And then he gets to the last one, which is where he admits to committing the crime. And he says, Your Honor, these motions,
we'll keep it.
Motion 1, 2, motions 1 through 5, we'd ask be stricken. We have no objection with motion 6 being admitted on the record. And the guy's just like, yeah, you're admitting that on the record. And I sat in on his trial because he went to trial, and they got a certified copy of it. And they said, ladies and gentlemen, he admits to doing it. Thump. And they slap it on the table, and that's admissible. And it got submitted to the jury as an exhibit. And the guy, I don't think he realized that till he got to trial. That
clearly not.
And then he felt like he was getting tricked, and it's like, well, yeah, you tricked yourself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them. I think it's a good way to end this particular episode is that they do end up basically tricking themselves into believing that they know the legal system when they don't. And I see a lot of people that are involved in the legal system that when I watched how you watch a lot of cases, and I watch a few too. Isn't it interesting how you watch a few people do some kind of critique or a review of it, and then you see the other side, and you're like, "What the fuck are they talking about?" Look at, I'm sure you and I will eventually be able to talk about the Johnny Depp thing. When you look about this, people trying to support Amber Heard, you're like, "What the hell are they? What did they watch? What literally have they watched to come up with all this nonsense?" And they've literally fooled themselves into believing something that just isn't comporting with reality. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and it's weird because those people walk down the street with us every day, and you run into them, and
Isn't that scary? That's frightening.
Yeah, it is, and at times you don't ever know it.
And they seem to collect on the internet too. This is one thing I've noticed. There's big balls of fuck out there, and these big balls of fuck have these people that kind of associate with each other that are just all the same hive sociopathic mindset. That if one of them says something and they all kind of agree, and you're like, where are they getting this nonsense from? Did they read what I read? Because I may not be an expert on this, but when I read this is not when I'm gleaning. When I ask the people that know the topic, they're like, yeah, you read it right. And it's like, what the hell are they talking about? The expert's like, I don't know. And it's not just law, it's science, it's politics. It's every field out there. You have people that think they know more about a topic, and they don't. And that the basis for Dunning-Kruger, obviously. So
yes.
I'm a layperson. I admit to that. I look. I may know a little bit about something, but I just talk about it. But nobody should ever talk about anything with me. Thinking that I'm kind of expert in anything. That's it's silly. Because you'd be wrong.
Sure, and I mean, I guess I'll say this too. I am far from the smartest guy in the room myself, and I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. I've been wrong a bunch before, and I'm willing to accept that. So, I think that's another big thing. Most of them don't ever act like that. They're never willing to be considered wrong.
Yeah, and I do that on my own channel. It's like, look, if you found something I have an error in, I will be happy to correct it. And it does happen. I mean, just recently, I don't know even what it was. Somebody was like pointing out, hey, I think you goofed on this. I'm like, oh, hey, no, what it was. It was on, it was actually on Twitter. I had actually said something about humans being a sexually dimorphic species, which they are, but I was relating that to comedic dimorphism, and there's a biologist, and he's like, I think you mean gamete dimorphism, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. He's a biologist, I'm not, but he was absolutely right, and I should have known better. But I love those. I love those things when you're corrected, because now you know what, I'm not going to make that mistake again.
Yeah, well, and when I talked about like the Trump affidavit, and I was talking about the different security clearances, there's classified secret, top secret SCI.
I had confidential.
And somebody corrected me by mentioning there was an issue about they're not higher classifications. There's ways to separate information so that not everybody, it's not every information you need to see. And I did know that it's like a need to know basis, and that's compartmentalization.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can actually, believe it or not, even though you might have this level, you might have like some access to higher. Like I only had confidential, but we did have access to some secret information, and because ships movements is considered secret.
Yes.
And so when we were actually, this has all been released now, but we were actually at one time disposing of chemical weapons during the Gulf War that supposedly didn't exist in one of the atolls. This was our mission, but we had the news was putting out that we were doing LEO ops, law enforcement operations, and we knew better. But that was considered to be, if you would have divulged that at the time, that would have been bad. But of course people know about it now.
So we went to some coral reef, and so we basically went to Nemo's house and dumped a bunch of chemical weapons on it.
Sorry, Nemo, we liked your movie though.
Did we find out, like, did it kill everything off, or what happened?
No, we didn't just dump it overboard. We went. It was a proper disposal.
You said you disposed.
We went to dispose the plant. They went to the
a plant. Okay. Yeah, plant. When you said you disposed it, like. No. When you're disposing, you make it sound like the old videos of World War II after the victory, when like, there's videos of it, like after the war was over, they're like, we got a ship full of tanks. What do we do? And they literally just dropped the gates and they just shoved everything overboard.
It was a process.
Okay.
We had to dispose of it.
All right.
So
okay. Fair enough.
Although there was an instance where we had some a minor incident where we had some radioactive coolant go overboard, but we don't want to talk about that. Well, it happens.
Yeah, those three-eyed fish are probably dead by now.
I'm serious. Limo is sterile now. All right. So, anyways, to wrap it up, I do have to do another stream tonight. My apologies, but this is fun. And what?
No, not at all.
The short streams are good too. I enjoy them just as much. So let people know where you can find you, because if you guys have not subscribed to Sean here, you guys are missing out. He has fun streams. I don't get a chance to watch him that often, but he has these hangouts where he just kind of chills and talks about law and drinks alcohol. Cool, right? So
yeah, what's not to love? So I'm at Potentially Criminal here on YouTube. And if you guys, all kinds of stuff, and I have an email address you guys can contact me at. If you guys ever have, like, hey, where I live, there's something cool going on, or something's going on, I'm always happy to answer questions. Or if there's something in your neighborhood, I could comment on that. Or if you have questions, I can say, like, here's a general idea, or you should go talk to a lawyer about that.
Oh, I got so many. I got so many questions.
Yeah, but it's available. But I'm available on there if you guys ever have questions. I like talking about it, and you can always see me around.
Yeah, that's awesome. And by the way, like I said, I'll reach out to you in a couple of days. I like so much things we can definitely talk about.
Definitely.
But it's so funny because I will mention this because it happens to be relating to this channel before I log off here. So as you know, I did win a lawsuit against one of the former founders of this particular channel. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So in order to collect that judgment in that particular state, there's a long, involved process. And so I started that process, and I sent it to my attorney, and I said, "Hey, can you look it over?" This guy's great. I mean, this guy has been with me for 2.5 years. It's like one of his oldest case, and so I consider him an actual friend. I mean, and so he's looked it over. He's like, "Hey, dude, let me just do it for you, man." Because he's on a fix anyways. He's like, just pay for whatever the service fee, whatever because you gotta have him served with it. And then the filing fees, which is nominal, postage stuff, whatever. I'm like, dude, just do it for me. I would much rather have that. Make sure it's done properly, because filing stuff for the courts, you want to make sure it's done right. So as people may want to be updated on, yes, I'm trying to collect my judgment. It's a $150,000 judgment, and I'm going through the process of what it takes. I'm not going to get into specifics. They don't even know that, but whatever. And also, I still have talked to the detective, and then I'll tell you, Sean, the detective has told me this. He said, hey, we're still looking at all this evidence stuff to see if we can file. This has been 30 days. They're still looking at it. That's actually a good sign, is it not? Because if they were not interested, they would have said, yeah, we're not going to do anything. Wouldn't it be? I mean, you think maybe?
Maybe.
Hard
maybe.
I mean, hard to know. But
well, I mean, it could be they were working on it, or this, the other stuff has come up. I mean, it could be
a lot
any
of things.
or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not dead in the water. Yes. It's not dead in the water. They didn't say,
they
didn't
send. Yeah, they didn't send it back and say LOL on a post-it note. So.
Right. I'll have to send you. I'll have to send you some stuff you might be interested in. All right, man. Sean, it's always a pleasure, man. I appreciate you coming on. For those who want to watch something else, go to my channel, Steve McRae. It's in the link in the video description. I'm going to have a call-in show. If you are a victim of Katie Joy Paulson, please call in. Tell me your story. I want to know your history with her. I want to know what she's done to you. This is all about you. You guys already know my history.
I'm sure there's a lot of those people.
There is a lot, but whether they call it or not, we'll see. Again, it's I don't expect it to be a big to do, but I do know people that have messaged me. It's like, hey, Steve, yeah, I'll talk about what happened. Oh, okay, let's do that. So, all right,
yes,
all right, hey guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Thanks for all the super chats, like, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to Potentially Criminal, and we'll see you later. Peace.
Good night, everybody.